Google. Oh,
Boom!
Google have Google have approved this Hangout. This Hangout may
What were they
continue.
doing in those intervening seconds between clicking? What were they sifting in terms of data?
That's it. Who knows? So yes, here we are. Uh, I, I went fishing with the title on this one. I mentioned cyber infrastructure,
Ah,
so we'll see who gets drawn into that one. I also mentioned that there will be scenes of gratuitous coding uh, and other technobobbery. So
that'll scare
you
them off.
you have been warned. So for people who haven't been watching these, Alan and I have been doing quite a bit of work with WordPress as a tool to support courses and classes. And we just used the opportunity to swap notes, see what's happening. So you've got the exciting bit, Alan, because you're into fault vectors. You are live.
Yeah, the site is going. It's an aggregation site. It's actually not all that different from my past site. So in some ways, I mean, I'm really happy with the site, but and I have thrown a few somewhat different wrinkles into it, but it's kind of an extension of some of the previous syndication sites that I have done. But it's kind of like in the DS-106 model that there is a official class at Virginia Commonwealth University. I'm wearing my swag too. They gave me just to get my PR out. Someone needs to make sure John Becker sees that. And so, like in DS-106, there are students who have registered for a class at Virginia Commonwealth, and then we're aggregating their work, and we're also making it available for anybody openly on the internet to participate. But unlike DS-106, where sometimes we had one or two sections going at a time, we have six. So there's about 100 enrolled students. There are 6 different faculty teaching this class, which is a research and writing class. And basically, we kind of said to students, get a blog. They do have a hosted Buddy Press multi-site hosting thing called Ram Pages because it's kind of interesting. There's where Tom Woodward comes in there. Their mascot is a ram, so it's rampages.us. And Gardner Campbell's leading this. There's some big ideas floating in here. He's lining up some really good speakers, and the typical class is about doing a research paper where students learn how to do outlines and format citations and use the library. Gardner wants to extend this to sort of be a place where students do and share their work openly on the internet. And the topic is actually kind of some of the founding ideas of the internet. So the first reading was from Vannevar Bush's As We May Think from 1945, which outlined, in his idea of this memex, a lot of what we think or take for granted in the internet. Not all of it. But there'll be stuff from Doug Engelbart, Ted Nelson, Alan Kay. I think this is all unofficial, but they're going to have some live hangouts, and I know potentially Ted Nelson is supposed to be there for one, and he's an interesting character. Was like 50 years that Xanadu was put out there, and I think he's working on Alan Kay, and there might be an important tech person from Apple, but that's all up in the air. So we just launched the site thoughtvectors.net. Basically, the class started Tuesday, and we set it up Friday to be ready for students to start adding their blogs. And as usual, the lesson comes home. It is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
People. I think people think it's easy. It's RSS. Your site has an RSS feed. You throw a URL at the wall, and you're going to be able to get the feed out. And frankly, we took a different approach, and we kind of used. Go ahead.
Well, it's perhaps something for us to pick up later, but the Apple announcement, the recent Apple announcement, seemed to be trying to revive RSS.
Really, I missed it. I totally missed all the Apple stuff.
You know, it's Tony Hurst pointed me at them, and you know, so they're talking about streams and notification streams. You know, in Safari, I think being able to actually detect RSS feeds again, whereas right now a lot of the browsers have killed that functionality, and you have to add the extensions in just to detect feeds. So I think that's quite interesting, but I completely understand where you're coming from in terms of the pain.
Yeah, so I think, you know, we've probably had to, you know, hand check half the feeds stuff that comes in, and we, as you know, with Feed WordPress, in my experience, it works best when you can send Feed WordPress the exact URL for the feed instead of asking it to detect the feed. So we kind of set up a process to help students know what their feed is, and a lot of them did get it. So I don't want to say that it was impossible. And then I used a similar thing for DS106, a gravity form, where they enter the information, and we kind of use the same script that you know is down there underneath the hood of writing it to the links in Feed WordPress, and that works cleanly. You know, if you can get a proper RSS feed into that form field, you can get their feed into the site really easily.
So when you're I went through the gravity form thing, and it was nice to have that kind of staged process of explaining what an RSS feed was and what type of feed you might want to use, and go through all that. So is that a fully automated process? If someone submits a valid RSS feed, something go on in the back end to add people into the right places?
Yeah, it goes right in. Since we're not doing any community things, they don't even know that they're creating a WordPress account on the site. So, and since we're asking them to do Twitter, I have them enter their Twitter name, and that's actually the username that I use on WordPress. But they never realize that they have a WordPress account. And then we write the link to the feeds table, and then we can associate. We know who to associate that feed's content with.
Oh, so it's for the students. Is it different for the open participants?
No, it's the same for the open. You know, when we ask those questions about their affiliation, then I'm writing different categories or tags to the link notes. So everything that the people post, like if you're an open participant, you know, your stuff gets tagged open or put in the category open and all blogs. If you're a VCU student, you know, I had a category for being from Virginia Commonwealth University. I had one for being a student in the class, one for being in all the blogs. So the way Feed WordPress can set up organizational data on top of the feeds coming in, to me is really useful. You know, so that's always what I think about in the beginning. What are the ways that I may want to organize the content coming in? You know, and I mean, you do it too by kind of the source. You know, you separate. You know, you have a category or tag for Twitter syndication and Digo, etc. So you can create that organizational sense to it. And that's worked well. And I haven't checked this morning. I mean, when I left, there were over 100 blogs syndicating in there, and that was about 3/4 of the students who were registered. Which to me is really impressive for the first couple days of a class, because they not only have to figure out the feed, they have to set up a WordPress site, and they can use something else. They can use. We don't require that they use that one. It's just available, and it's, you know, free for them. They could use Blogger or WordPress.com, but the fact that most of them got set up and at least got past Hello World. And are now engaged. You know, most of them I think are writing their content. And you know, part of this decision was, you know, if you automate everything, it's great. It's easy for the person. They don't have to worry about the mundane details of what's an RSS feed and what's, you know. But in the sense of what the class is about, you know, and I agree. I think it's important for people to understand that there is this thing and this is how it works. So it's a little bit hard maybe to understand conceptually and confusing at first, but we want to expose them. We want them to know that there's when they look at a web page, they can view source and they can see the language of the web. That we want them to have that conceptual understanding, and so and trying to get an understanding of RSS is I've been in it so long that I forget. I mean, it's a strange thing. I mean. And it's something that you don't deal with when you're just updating on Facebook and posting to Instagram. That part, the syndication, it's there, I think, but it's hidden from you.
I think there's that is part of Octel, the course that I'm helping run. We do badging and we ask people to submit. We ask them to write a post and then submit it as a link. The number of people, and this is a technology enhanced learning course, the number of people that don't know how to submit the right link from the blog, so they're just submitting the general address rather than something that identifies the individual post. And what you click on the for me, I go into a blog, I click on the title, and that gives me that individual post rather than the blog rule. And for some of these blogs, that doesn't happen. You've got to basically start clicking on metadata links down in the bottom of the post.
Yeah.
And I can see why they struggle. And but that was quite an eye-opener. It's the first time that I've really experienced that, where people didn't have a URI that they could pull out the browser to give to us. So I think the whole literacy thing is quite interesting.
Yeah, and I like to think, this is how you address that problem. You have people go through the experience, and so this line about what you make that it's makes the experience not simple enough, but accessible enough that they can get over that hurdle. But at the same time, there is some of the understanding that like knowing the fact that how to figure out the link to something. And I would like to believe that once you've explained it once, then they have that ability to go forward. But it's been great to watch these. They're probably first-time bloggers, not all of them, but they're already embedding media. Some. Like most new people writing, they don't think necessarily about hyperlinks, but they've been catching on pretty quick, and so that's always encouraging to me when people start thinking about watching. So it looks like Gardner is tweeting. We should invite him in here.
Well, he's anything, so he's been putting some questions in.
Okay.
Should we invite him in as well?
Yeah.
Just for fun?
Yeah. You've never met him, have you?
For giggles?
Let's see if I can invite.
I don't. Let me see. But while I'm fiddling with that, so the question.
I don't think I can invite.
Let me. So he's asking about. Let me give you the question, and I'll fiddle with buttons. So you'd love to hear what we have to say in terms of data visualizations around this sort of thing around. How to show the dynamic life of what vectors in a concept space is his terminology. Yeah. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, usually I reach for your Twitter visualization because I mean there's so much in and I think people may have seen like a screenshot or but I don't know how much people spend time really kind of trying to unravel what the what that mapping means and There's a shape to it. Tom and I were comparing, some. He did one for a class last year where the linking is pretty tightly. It's a pretty dense central cloud, and with this one, it's probably the pattern you're seeing. There's that kind of core of a lot of activity, which was basically because the people who have been playing this course have been, tweeting all along, and then we have this kind of intermediate cloud or the outlying cloud where they're just hanging out there, and those are all people new to it. But when we saw yesterday, there's kind of a middle ground. So there's, I don't know how you go about, defining what those regions mean. So that's interesting.
It's someone
my thought.
who did a. Sorry. Well, that's one of the things. To Jonathan Worth, I think that was a real eye-opener for him. I think that's the issue that we have, is that a lot of these things we write, it's hard to see the connections with them, even if there are direct connections. You're mentioning someone or you're linking to something. It's so that's why I find that sort of thing useful. But someone else tweeted this week about how those sorts of diagrams are becoming the new word clouds. So they only have so much value to them. But I think that type of thing is quite interesting, and it was quite eye-opening to do it with DS106 and actually look at how the blogs were linked together and create one of those diagrams to actually see that there was a thread of discussion, or there was certain summary posts where someone was someone like yourself was going through 20 different blogs and just summarizing what someone had said.
I kind of have dreams about trying to figure out to go back and figure out how you did that. So we are syndicating in Twitter as well to WordPress, just with the ideas. And I mean this. I mean, within the WordPress database is stuff that we don't always know how to well, you know how to do it, but I mean we've got activity, we've got time. I was playing around with just a real basic script for like an hour, try to do something that would track the total number of outward links from all posts, and maybe start saving that, because that could be a sign of network activity. And it's just crude. It's just counting how many href tags there are in all the posts on the blog that are being syndicated. So I'm trying to think about what are things that we can pull out of the WordPress and Twitter data stream that we can find some meaning for. And I think when I think about the Twitter Explorer, it's like it may not tell me anything. It's going to lead me to ask questions like, what do these groupings mean? And I really like showing, and I only discovered like a couple months ago that feature when you go to someone's profile and you can play out all their conversations as a replay, and to me that's really interesting to think about, because you see someone tweets and then someone retweets and replies, and you're seeing a conversation play out as a timeline. How's that done? That's crazy.
Not very well would be the first part of that answer. It was kind of a last minute, because I'd really like some sort of control for that playback, and it doesn't. So it just runs through the timeline. So it works in certain scenarios, and because the playback is a fixed length. Correct, I think. If someone said something 1 month ago and then says something else 2 months later, that that's condensed into 30 seconds, and if someone says something in over 24 hours, again that's just condensed into 30 seconds, so it loses some liberty. But like you, that's an interesting side of it. Of it's kind of delving into what's going on, and seeing how individuals are interacting. But I still like the kind of the zoomed out view of the whole picture. I think is incredibly useful. Mike Caulfield has done a post this week on he opened it. I put it into the vectors some narrated wiki stuff, because I think that's in terms of a knife, which how people are together doing stuff, and one of the things with it's not just showing you the one-to-one relationships. You can see second and third degree relationships, and I think that's what's missing within the data that we have, is being able to see those relationships. So it's not just those one-to-one responses within a blog, where someone is referencing someone else. It's who else is in this picture, but just off the side, so you can't see them.
Right.
And just to make you aware of that person is there, or they might be responding to your ideas, maybe not directly, which I think for me, that's right now, that's the fault that kind of is, and something I want to try and explore a bit further, because I think that is parts of these courses are about trying to make connections between stuff, between people, and if we can do that a bit better, I think in terms of other visualizations that we use in data from Okta, we do some really basic stuff, but I think it's very useful in terms of when we are creating, we're suggesting people to create new blog spaces, is to actually identify those new spaces, and we just use really tools to do that, like how many posts in their RSS feed, and so if it's a 10, then likelihood is they've done under 10 posts, and then but we don't share that information to the rest of the using internally, and I think that's pretty.
What's
so
the?
I think that you could quite easily.
Sorry, my either my connection, you're dropping out quite a bit on me. What's kind of the activity level in Octel now? How many enrolled, and like how many people are regularly active?
I did. Hopefully, I'll be able to publish this soon. I did a report for an internal report. So we had 1,000 registrations, and
wow.
From those 1,000 registrations, so this was a form that was up for a year, just collecting people. From 1,000. Let me see if I can find down to first week. We had, I think it was around 300 people contributing in that week, which was better than last year. Last year we had 1,400 people register, and in the first week we had under 250 people active. Now, natural kind of drop off. the next week we had 216 active people, 114 in the week following that. Then we had a reading week where we weren't anticipating people doing stuff, but there were still 80 people active in that week, and now we're around kind of 50 mark. Doing it's not, there's a degree of caution with that because some of those numbers include people tweeting stuff. So if someone just shares something interesting to their followers that gets retweeted with the hashtag, then that gets pulled in. So, but I'm reasonably happy with the number of active people because from the bits of fragments of discussions I've had with them, they really like the course and they're having fun. They're they're kind of taking a very serious decision about, do I watch the World Cup or do I do this course? Which I think a good thing.
Is the general participant, are they tech professionals? Are they teachers? I mean, who are signing up for this?
It's quite a mixture. There's a lot of HE people, but we've managed to get a lot of people from colleges and schools and so it's interesting. I think it's getting the mindset of you've got a very wide audience, so we do try to make it a bit easy in terms of explaining. Signing the architect course, which that's a nice, to get people into the spaces is a really nice. That's the bit one of the aspects anyway that I'm particularly pleased with, that we've got people writing. Whether or not they continue doing it, time will tell. But sometimes the first step's the hardest, and we've done that. So quite a mix.
I know one of the dream things that might happen is this is only the first week in the course. I think it goes 10 weeks to the end of July. Is that students may be doing some collaboration, but hopefully they might even see the value and figure out how to set up some syndication within their own sites.
This year more than last year, in asking, how do you do your badging? How do you, if that's an indication of interest in doing this sort of thing, more awareness of the potential, or maybe we just got a particular group of people in who are curious, or I haven't been blogging enough about how we've been doing these things. Pick any of the above.
It gets pretty intense when you're keeping all the lights on and the gears running. I haven't even done a check. I need to do a check and see what.
I think if you click on the Q&A button, there's a great David Weiner quote that I often pull out about programming and coding. I think it's something like one of the joys of programming is creating robots with your mind.
Hmm.
Um, that whole
Looks like we're up to 124
so
blogs indicated.
yeah. Well, that's I was writing out, so,
I'm losing you, Martin. Hope you're still. I don't know if you're still hearing me, but getting a lot of dropouts here. Could be on my end.
I blame my service provider.
Well, we'll figure it out in the arc. I don't know how. Yeah, I'd be curious. I don't know what happens with the way they do the archiving here. It shouldn't be based upon either of our the way we're receiving it. It's just how Google's getting it all.
Mm, yeah, it's interesting. I think he might pick one of us. I don't know. Uh,
In their great wisdom.
yeah. So, have you got any more ideas of things you want to do within folk vectors during the course, or um,
You know, I was. I mean, my thought. I mean, first of all, the it was just a mad rush to get everything together and working, and getting the syndication set up and people in was the major thing. And then my thought was, over the next couple of weeks, start to see what we can do in terms of either some of that visualization or trying to get some meaningful data out of there. So it was kind of okay. Now that I just got home from this trip, I can start thinking about that. And I don't know. It always just feels like that there's a big pile in there, and it's just a matter of trying to sort out what's meaningful and doable for people. Honestly, for me, it's more interesting just to see the things that people are producing and writing and making sure. Of course, we got individual teachers in there. We've got gardeners, so the things that keeps a community moving along with this stuff is kind of it's totally out of the technical range. It's the commenting that people do, and the students are going to start having to comment on each other's work, and and I think this concept of trying to pay attention to what are the mindful or the associative trails of the way we learn and discover things, which go outside the bounds of what we measure. So I get an idea because I'm looking at a flower in my garden, and that makes me go reach for a book off the shelf. All that stuff is outside the scope of data. So trying to keep that in mind, some of the stuff that's outside of what we can track is interesting to me, and so I just want to see what we can do to make sure that people are doing a lot of writing and connecting and building those links. But I think if anything, I might start at trying to understand, and I don't even know how to go about doing this, some of the relationships of interlinking between the sites that we're syndicating. And that may land me in the Gephi space. I need to do some learning to figure out how to do some of that analysis. It's not really a thing I would say is my forte, but I don't think anything's my forte.
I think that has been mentioned in Octal is we've got this black hole on comments that we're obviously pulling blogs out of our reaction, but we're not getting the comments in. Is there anything you think you'll be able to do? Just trying to get some of that information to other people.
Well, I mean, the whole thing is that comments are not they're not easy to get. If everybody was using WordPress, that's fine because you can fetch comment data through an RSS feed, and I I think we're going to work with the individual. Each of our instructors that are teaching this class are running, we call it the clubhouse site. So it's the place where they're just posting specific information for their sections. And so, and since most of their students are using WordPress, we're probably looking at doing something to syndicate in the comments from the student blogs. But unless I'm wrong, I mean, there's no way to get at the comment data from Blogger, and Tumblr is, doesn't even natively have comments. So I mean, tracking comments has been, something that people have desired for a long time, until Discus, completely monopolizes the comment market, which I frankly hope doesn't happen. I'm not too sure how you really get at that enough that's really representational, and it's an issue. There was always this decision of with Feed WordPress, do I link out to people's blogs and send people out to comment space to blog, which generally is the way I prefer. I mean, if I write a blog, I want the comments to be happening in association with my blog, but then it's all dispersed, as opposed to if you syndicate everything in and keep it on the site, then you can have comments there, which I've only done with one project. So I think commenting, and then what do you consider Twitter, or Google Plus? I mean, it's a flavor of commenting, and it's completely separate from the content. And I don't know if we can ever really firmly get at that kind of in a sensible data way. Do you?
No, and part of the issue is that you for Blogger now, Google are doing the whole Google Plus for commenting, so you're definitely not going to get a data. Well, I doubt you'll be able to get for it. The kind of two thoughts I have is we put it as a mechanical Turk job to someone to get the comments out. They're that valuable to you. The other way to do it is I started playing around with a site called import.io, which basically allows you to turn the web into your own API. And I've only played with bits of it, but you can specify bits of the data, whether or not you do on a low way to try and detect where the comment box is on each site, and get the data in a more readable that way. I don't know, but one of the nice things about import.io is that a lot of web pages nowadays they don't render as web pages. They're just loads of JavaScript and code, and so you might see a comment on the page, but when if you try and scrape that, you're just going to get a bunch of JavaScript and AJAX calls that give you nothing. And import.io, I think, they basically use kind of headless browser technology as an option, so you will get rendered text back. But yeah, it's not. I think that's part of the reason I haven't really gone there, is because I know it's complicated. The being to kind of grab, but it sits there in my mind, because I think you're right that type of interaction is potentially the rich stuff. That's like the diamond. You got the gold of the blog post and then the diamond of the comments.
Yeah, like if there was something like an extension that could, every time you added a comment, would automatically put your own little. It's like a personal cookie. Like I played it one time about trying to use like just a cryptic tag every time I left a comment, but I kept forgetting to do it. And then trying to pull them in through Google. But that's imperfect. And so
yeah, I saw there was I saw someone basically had a recipe of every comment they made, tag it in delicious. So they basically were generating their own comment feed for
Yeah.
other material, but getting everyone to tag the
Yeah.
comments that they made. Yeah.
You have to be
Maybe
very detail oriented.
yeah. I, I don't know if ultimately that's the way you'd have to do it, but something where you're capturing what the user is doing, um, but even if you did a browser extension that was referring to a list of known blogs that were part of the course, and then when you were submitting Basecamp, you, you could probably make that work in web browsers, but as soon as
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
Forget it. Yeah.
not really workable.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, we may do. I mean, we'll. I don't know what's in the syllabus for this class, but it'd be an interesting exercise. I mean, for people just to sort of try mapping out the whole train of a from post to comment to reaction, just as an exercise to understand how dispersed it is. But yeah, I don't.
Someone else.
We got someone else.
Pumping in questions. So
Oh.
Karen Richardson. It's particularly strange for people who simply don't read blogs on a regular basis. Why would I need an RSS reader in the first place? I don't quite understand that.
For people who don't read blogs,
I have to say, as an yeah, I guess yeah. Don't read blogs on a regular basis. Yeah, if you don't read blogs on a regular basis, then
I mean, a part of the assumption there is that
chicken and egg.
Our RSS is more than just blogs. So you get it from from news sites and from the old days used to get before they were mobile. Used to get like RSS feeds for weather and stock tickers, and I keep an RSS feed from Flickr when someone sends a comment, so I know to respond. So I try to keep it separate from just being from blogs. It's just the reason why it's associated with blogs is that blogging software made it easier to automatically generate RSS feeds. That was the beauty.
I have to. I loved your note in your setup notes for fault vectors, where I think you were saying you were looking at the course reader stuff in Gardner. I can't remember his comment. It was something like he didn't want a reader; he wanted something pretty. I'm completely paraphrasing. Ruined that quote completely, but. So if people want an RSS reader, they should go to an RSS reader.
Not necessarily. I mean, I kind of was focused on that road because I kind of wanted to figure out how to do it because it makes sense to me. But I have to think about people who are new to this course experience, and also we want to encourage the exhibition and sharing of media as well. So we want people doing videos. And it does come in the reader. But I have this grand idea that I forgot to mention is that I don't think I wrote about is I'm pretty sure there's a way I can set up a second WordPress site with a different theme that uses the same database. I think you end up creating a second WP options table. So I've seen this. It's basically 2 different sites that share the same WordPress database. So I see this as basically 2 different sites that share the same WordPress database. So I see this as basically 2 different sites that share the same WordPress database. So I see this as basically 2 different sites that share the same WordPress database. So I see this as basically 2 different sites that share the same WordPress database. So you can have a different theme. So I can see another site having something like your reader theme. And that way, you have two different views. People who say, wow, I'd really like a better way to do faster scans of this. On the other hand, I just added a thing. I have something that generates an OPML dump for all the feeds, or just all the open participant feeds. So if someone knows what they're doing at the reader, they can easily import all the feeds. Although again, that's a static. It's the feeds at the time. But I think that is one thing I'm going to play with is see if I can. Some of it's just to see if I can figure out how to do it in WordPress. Basically, how to create a second site that has a different theme on it. So it'd be the same content, or at least for the dynamic flow of syndicated content that uses the reader perspective. So chicken and egg. It's kind of like a chicken omelet.
That's a pretty picture.
Bacon is always better, though.
Karen's so she followed up that question. So she's a professor and maybe or she didn't have Feedly accounts.
Right.
Boo hiss Feedly, hate him.
Yeah, what happened to them?
Using.
Did they have an exploit? I missed that
well, so I did warn everyone this was bobbery. Within Twitter, when you share a tweet now, Twitter will try and include a metadata card. So if you share a link to a blog post, if you include some metadata in your page, which Twitter recognizes as it's like a hypercard, it includes that information. So an excerpt, and if you've got a photo, it includes that. And what Feedly were doing was basically stealing those metadata cards, hypercards, and injecting a link to their own website, to their own app. So I didn't like that. I thought
devious.
Which it seems. I know I haven't looked at it closely, but I think Jetpack might, which is a WordPress plugin, I think they might be doing something similar, but not as vicious. I think they're just advertising the name rather than the Jetpack name rather than stealing your link. But when I looked at the Feedly stuff, what they were doing, it was really interesting in terms of how they were injecting that stuff, and basically as part of injecting a link to their own application, they were doing something similar to URL shortening sites. So they basically had a table of links and detecting to that link. So if you were a Twitter robot, it was stopping you and changing the metadata. It was just like redirecting you through to the site. Anyway, that was all.
That's one of those things where like Twitter starts to in its efforts to be bigger and whatnot. It's like expanding its basic functionality. With it's probably something interesting idea, but in a way that someone's it's going to blow things up. Keep it simple, folks. And I also I don't know, I'm way behind on reading some of this stuff. Like I want to spend some time. I've talked to Mike about the smallest federated wiki. I don't understand it, and I need to sit down and just watch the screencast, and he set me up a space to play with it, and that's one thing. But I know that Tim Owens and folks are experimenting with kind of this different sort of a push model instead of syndication where you're just constantly polling. You got something new. Is a model where if you're publishing, you send out notifications when you have something new. which is interesting. I don't know how far away that is from being something we can use on a class scale, but I trust Tim a lot, and it's one of those things like I think it's worth trying to understand a little bit better.
So is it this is when you publish something, it pings something?
Yeah, it's what's it called? Know this, I think, is the.
Okay.
I'm talking from like very know this. No, that's not. It's not that. That's some spam site. I should actually have figured out what I'm talking about before I was talking about it. But it's a pub sub hub sort of publishing model.
So is it? Is this so you publish something and then it pings something on mobile or?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to find.
Maybe skip over that bit.
Yeah, no. Tim wrote about it recently. It's here we go. Push pub sub hub at timowens.io. Let me put this link in here. Like I say, I hear about this stuff and I start talking about it.
I've played with the pub hub sub pub stuff before, so so that's kind of a notification type thing, which when I was which had that sort of technology included in it. It meant, if you, as soon as you hit the publish button on your Google Read, but I think Mike has done another post on this about, how becoming the center of a lot of, notification, it's where you're kind of where everything is at. I think at the danger of being to be a bandwagon hopping son of a gun, the wearables stuff coming out, I think is quite interesting because I think that puts a focus again on notification, just making people aware of stuff. Which, I always think back to, I used to work with a guy called Terry Mays, Professor Terry Mays, and he's been doing this work for many years. He's retired now, and he has a lovely paper on Groundhog Day where I think he talks through one of these scenarios of Jane gets up and there's a notification and so on. We were writing about these things decades ago and they still do. Should they happen? Should they work? I don't know. Anyway, that's a slight deviation. That was a ramble. We'll cut that out.
I cut that out. No, it's out there. No editing. I just imagine we're all walking around. It's like, oh, Martin just took a photo of you with his Google Glass, and I'm seeing in my Google Glass.
Yeah, it's going to get very meta. Get used to it, folks.
Yeah. You talk about it. We talk about trying to how do you find information about comments, and as things get, and then you got the whole range of communication that's ephemeral, so what do you do about that? I don't know. Well, we didn't throw out any gratuitous code, so we saved people from that.
I can do that now.
Show me your code.
Well, the bit of code that I put out this week is the open badges issuing stuff for WordPress. So that's out there in the world now.
That's good. Now, I'm see how far behind I am. I mean, I know you've been doing badging. Is this an implementation that you've done, or have you've written your own implementation?
It builds on an existing plugin called BadgeOS, which is available in the WordPress plugin directory, which really does everything for us in terms of creating badges, very useful kind of mechanisms for different ways to award badges. So you can do it through submissions or auto submissions, or there can be a set of steps that people have to do to get the badge. So it's been really useful for us in terms of creating different types of badges that are awarded using different mechanisms. But the issue I had with it was it was able to award a badge on your site. It had an image, and I think you could click on existed Mozilla backpack. It's essentially stuck on the site. So BadgeOS was developed by or commissioned by Credly, who are awarding sites. So you could have, through the plugin, you could have allowed people to collect the badge in the Credly site, and then Credly site, the person could push it to their Mozilla backpack, and that just seemed like too many steps to me. And so we have an add-on plugin. It's called the Open Badges Issuer add-on, which basically cuts out Credly. It uses BadgeOS. It's exposing all the information that BadgeOS is collecting and just exposing it as a JSON file, which is Backpack Open Badges compatible. So we've gone from these digital badges to being they're formatted in a way now that they're open badges, and people can click a button, get them in their backpack, and decide what they want to do with them from there. And it's quite interesting, it's a site into a host of dirty JSON files sitting on the site, and I think that's, for me, that feels quite empowering to have that there. But also, there's a commitment.
Yeah,
we have to keep the site up now. Yeah. If the site disappears, then that chain of information that validates the badge disappears as well.
All right, keep that site alive, Martin.
If my ISP will let me.
Well, good hanging out.
Yeah.
Sometime next week.
That'd be good. I'll see if I can get a better connection.
That's okay. You do what you can. It's good talking to you.
You too. Take it easy.
Cheers.